I always think, especially I've come in a bit flustered this morning, how important it is to just kind of gather ourselves in individually and as a group, collectively, and with everybody watching online as one big old community. So maybe we might just close our eyes, if that's helpful to you, and gather yourself in. Just get a sense of maybe all the disparate parts of yourself all over the place. How might you remember yourself? Remember, come back to home base. Almost like, before we get into the rest of the service, like tilling the soil of our beings, getting ready. Just to spend these few moments readying ourselves for whatever's in store today. Whatever it is that we have to receive, whatever it is that we have to give. So whether you're here in the room or watching online, feel into the particularity of the presence wherever you are. Like in this room, can you feel the presence that's made up of all our collective presences and of the room itself and of everything that's ever happened in here? Sense into the richness of that, of the gift of what it is to even be here together. Picture yourself as if you're looking down on yourself from above. So if you're here in the room, just like look down as if you're that, on the ceiling, looking down, seeing where you're sitting in the room. Who do you see on your left? Can you feel their presence and their disposition? Who do you see on your right? Is there anyone on your right? Look down at everybody in this room. See in your mind's eye everybody watching. Get a sense of, here we are, a bunch of sincere people with good hearts. And as Thomas Merton used to say, with God a little sincerity goes a long way. So here we are with our sincere hearts. May we have ears to hear this morning and eyes to see, wide open hearts to the divine in ourselves and in each other. In your own way, invite that wonderful, loving, all-encompassing, gentle, powerful, divine presence into your life with all the sincerity you can muster. Into the world. That our presence here this morning will make a difference to bringing peace wherever we are.
Well, today is the second in a series that I'm doing on the subject of being at peace. And last week we looked at the idea that in order to be at peace, our very being needs to be at peace. We can't control all the chaos that's going on in the world. We can only bring ourselves into the peace of the present moment and deal with each moment from a perspective of that peace as and when it arrives. So we maintain ourselves within that present moment, being at peace as each chaotic moment comes up. And in this way, the idea is we're not buffeted by the waves, but we sort of stand on the crest of each wave as it travels along the storm of the ocean. And the storm of the ocean is our lives. Our role is to remain in the present moment. And then you use any disturbance as a reminder to stay present, rather than just being swept out of the present moment, out of ourselves by whatever disaster comes along. And in this way, we remain at peace in what is ultimately a chaotic environment. Now, if you missed the previous episodes of this, if you look on the red cards which are in the chair in front of you, you can catch up on that, go to our website, and you'll be able to see or listen to those things. And if you want to be on a mailing list, those blue cards are there for you. So, as we remain in that peace at the center of things, we're able to look out at the world and take stock of what's going on from a place of peace rather than the chaos, and we can't really get a good perspective if we're living in chaos. And one of the advantages of being in that still point is that you can develop a perspective that's not chaotic, but one that comes from stillness and peace. And those of you with a meditation practice, and if you don't have a meditation practice, can I use this as a prompt to start one up and say, I think it's a good idea. And if you think, oh, I haven't got one, I don't know how to start one, if you look at the bulletin that I've left out there, we are starting a regular weekly meditation every Tuesday at 8:30 in the morning in what we're now calling the Gallery Zendo downstairs. So we're going to create a little Zendo downstairs. We're going to have a weekly meditation every week of the year and that's on Tuesdays. Or you can come and ask me about it, and that'll be fine. Those of you who practice meditation will know that when you come out of a period of meditation, things look different than when you went in. You go in with when you come out at peace. We're grounded in the present moment, and therefore we're not swayed by the immediacies of whatever crisis is before us. I always love that quote from Rowan Williams, the previous Archbishop of Canterbury, who said, to put it boldly, meditation is the only ultimate answer to the unreal and insane world that our financial systems and our advertising culture and our chaotic, unexamined emotions encourage us to inhabit. To learn meditative practice is to learn what we need so as to live truthfully and honestly and lovingly. It is a deeply revolutionary matter. He's really saying that the way through is through getting that peace. And that's all about the perspective that is not thrown around by our insane world and our unexamined emotions. Last week we had a passage from Thomas Keating, and he says in the same way, he says, we have a certain openness to everything and nothing. That's when we're in the present moment, both at once and in all that's in between. This is God in us, and we are in God in the present moment. He says this is eternity, this is eternal life, shared in common with all other creatures in an infinite variety of ways. Inhabiting the present moment, inhabiting eternal life. And that is a very different perspective. Almost, it's a perspective from eternal life, which is in the present moment. And the love that's there, the idea of God that it implies, because God is love. And from that perspective, we get a better view. So the question really is then, what is the perspective you get from seeing life from that place of peace? What can we deduce from the view? Because, we see that chaos every day on our television screens, literally every day. How can we possibly understand or come to terms with the chaos that's going on out there and link it to some sort of sense of peace? And I was very interested in something that Cynthia Bougeault said when she came a couple of weeks ago. She said that this chaos, the chaos that we see in the world, was a result of the breakdown of the mental stage of the evolution of consciousness. And I thought that was quite interesting. And that's what I want to talk about today. You know, what does it mean? And you know, how can we see that breakdown of that mental stage? She didn't explain it, but it got me thinking as to what she might be alluding to. Now, I know some of you are familiar with the idea of spiral dynamics. Who's familiar with spiral dynamics? Just put your hand up. A few of you. Right, okay, good. This is an understanding of human development that was developed by Jean Gebser, and also Ken Wilber worked on Gebser's work. And the idea was that what we're talking about in this idea of spiral dynamics is the whole stream of human history. The whole stream of human history. And the idea that consciousness is evolving throughout the stream of human history. And if we can see some sort of development in that evolution of consciousness, that's the stages of development that is involved in spiral dynamics. And just to do a bit of a recap for those who are not familiar, the first stage of this consciousness is Stone Age consciousness. And humanity in that consciousness was, Freud called it primary narcissism. It's physical, it's self-centered, and people thought of themselves as a part of nature. The idea in Stone Age consciousness was that the whole thing, the whole of life was an enclosed room. And it was a sealed environment. And humanity was a part of that sealed environment. And, you know, the living was by instinct, by sensation, you know, high level of sensing danger, reproduction, no real culture, not a part of nature like environmentalists. They just lived it as basic survival: food, water, warmth, sex, safety as a priority. So that's the first stage they identified, that Stone Age consciousness. And this then developed in about 10,000 years BC into magical consciousness. And this development was from instinctive behavior, Stone Age, to an attempt to control the environment. That's the difference. In this magical consciousness, there was a desire to control the environment. They saw themselves still as in that enclosed room and connected to everything, but they developed magical beliefs. And the idea was that using certain words, you can control what was going on. You know, you can make things happen through things that you did. There was a sort of superstition that if you did things a certain way, there's a sort of tribal culture. You know, the living souls of plants, inanimate objects, you know, voodoo dolls were in this sort of area. You know, the sky and thunderstorms, you know, it was alive. And natural phenomenon could be controlled by word ceremonies, rain dances, you know, that sort of thing. That whole issue is magical culture. So these cultures still exist today in different environments. You know, you can see Stone Age culture today, particularly, you know, people living on the streets and stuff like that. You're very much in that environment. And you can see, you know, magical culture as well today. And then in about 5,000 years BC, we started to develop mythical consciousness. And that is the emergence of the self as distinct from the tribe. It's not an enclosed room, but in mythical consciousness, we are subject to the gods. There are gods in mythical consciousness. It's not just word ceremonies. There are things that are controlling it. And what we have to do is propitiate those gods. That's how that works. So there's, you know, child sacrifice, you know, all that sort of sacrifice. You know, a lot of the Old Testament stuff, crusades, you know, violating codes had severe repercussions. There was very paternalistic law and order, control through guilt, you know, very conformist. And, an awareness of the concreteness of the world but there were rules that you lived by. It's a sort of law and order stage of development that includes the church. You have to really propitiate God. And the Middle Ages, it's the Middle Age no longer believes that you can make the world do things by magic, but you make the world what it is by appealing to the gods. The whole story of Jesus dying for God, that is all into that mythical consciousness, that whole area. And of course, it's still very present today. And then we emerge into the area that we're talking about, really, which really started in about the 16th century, which is rational consciousness. It's the emergence of science, that we can work out how to make things work by ourselves. We're not dependent on the gods. Science. Universities developed, governments, the Enlightenment lifting us culturally from the mythical level to an achievement-orientated, materialistic gaining sort of way of doing things. And that is still very much with us today. It is the dominant consciousness today. And to some extent, this is what I think Cynthia was referring to when she talked about the breakup of the mental stage of our development. And there's more to come, but I'll come to that. But in history, we've almost got to the stage where, right now in history, we've got to the stage, I think, where science is not going to help us anymore. I mean, the fact of the matter is, of course, they're going to invent things that are going to help us with cancer and, make things easier for us. But actually, when you think about it, science, I think, has taken humanity as far as it can. If you look at the way it worked, we had the agrarian revolution in the 18th century. We had the arrival of steam and trains and mechanization and everything that the 20th century brought. And then there came a time, I think, where technology began to turn on itself. Look at the mechanized war of the 20th century with the First World War, which is really the first mechanized war, and then the Second World War, and the nuclear age, and the growth of the military-industrial complex. And yes, technology can help us get smarter. But I really would want to say that smart is not going to do it for us in the 21st century. Smart is not enough. We don't need more smartness. Technological development has taken us so far, but what we need now is wisdom. And more than tools to make things easier and give us better ways of killing people, the evolution of consciousness is moving beyond the rational stage and into something else. And you can see that not only by the way that our technology seems devoid of any love and wisdom, but also in the way that the very idea, and I think this is where you can see the mental age dropping away, the very idea of truth is being called into question. The very idea of truth. You've got different truths. You've got personal truth, which is, I think this is a beautiful chapel. You may not. You've got, social truths that we have, where we agree to certain things. And you have objective truth, which is like 2 + 2 = 4. But previously, we were able to argue truth on the basis of facts. And now there are alternative facts. Politicians can just say that something has happened, even if it hasn't. And people will take it as being so. Not because it has any basis in fact, but because it suits them culturally. We're almost back to the idea of reality being an enclosed room. But now it's not nature that's enclosing us and of which we're a part. Now, we create the walls and the wallpaper from the room with facts and ideas that suit our worldview. We've become so smart that we actually create the reality we want to live in. And if people don't like that reality, then we condemn them as being other, or strangers, or unpatriotic, or wrong, or pagan. Humanity is now creating its own culture. It's now creating its own reality, whether or not it has any connection to the facts that are intrinsically real. And as you can see, as it says in that song, given that situation, there may be trouble ahead. So, we're in that stage of, let's face the music and dance, really. And that means seeing that our smartness will only take us so far. And right now, a lot of us are looking into the mirror like Narcissus and falling in love with whatever reality we want to create. Now that seems to me the breakup of that mental stage of consciousness, where we're believing our own untruths. We just believe we've got to a stage where we just believe what we want to believe. But interestingly, the Earth, the planet, is saying, no! And you can see the reaction of the planet, to the sort of troubles that we're creating. What is needed now is not, I would suggest, technological advancement, but the development of the wisdom to see the true nature of reality and respond to that appropriately. We're talking about how you create peace. And I really, unless you are able to do this, you never will have peace because you're not dealing with reality. It is through ethical, moral, and spiritual development that we'll face the music and be able to dance again, I think. And that may sound a bit po-faced. And do you have the expression po-faced here? Po-faced means serious. You look it up in the thing. That's what in England, if you're po-faced, you're just very serious. It sounds a bit po-faced and serious, but I don't think it is. It's saying that the next stage of the evolution of consciousness is into seeing the interdependence of all things, our interconnectivity, the importance of deep and loving wisdom. I love that definition of wisdom, which says that wisdom is knowledge informed by love. And that gives a sort of flavor of it. And so this leads us out of the idea of rational consciousness into visionary or soul consciousness, a different sort of thing, beyond simply thinking rationally, but now we can see paradox. We can see in 3 dimensions. It's not just black and white. We begin as well to see the mind and the process of thinking as part of the equation of working things out. It's not all of it. It's part of it. We need to, in this stage, free the human spirit from greed, egalitarianism. We need to free from greed. We need to become more egalitarian, to value communities, diversity, multiculturalism, the idea of green thinking, planetary thinking, ecology. And it is a quantum shift of the goalposts, aware of ourselves as part of something bigger, almost to die to our old selves and become a new person, the born-again idea. And the result is an expanded vision, less attached to beliefs, with an awareness of the mind. There's a grand unification, a new spirit as a meshwork for all existence, multiple levels of interaction, harmonics, mystical forces. Whether we like it or not, this is the way forward. And the tyrants, or the would-be tyrants we see in the world today, are actually the last gasps of the rational age, using fake rationalism to justify their own greed and violence, and creating a made-up reality to entice those not capable of thinking for themselves, of following them into that dying reality. And there's more. We've spoken before about the changes over the years that have happened to spiritual paradigms, So looking at spiritual, but the way we look at things spiritually. What Karl Jaspers identifies as the first axial age, the birth of major religions from 800 BC to Christ, around the time of the emergence of Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, and Lao Tzu. That's what's called, in spiritual terms, the first axial age. And it was characterized by the emergence of the idea that the individual could experience the transcendent. That characterizes that age, that the individual can experience the transcendence, that you could have your own relationship with God. And you do that for two things: moral guidance and personal salvation. That's the first actual age. It's about moral guidance and personal salvation. And we've now moved, wait for it, into the second axial age, where the aim is collective unity for a planetized Earth. And those are the words of Ilia Delio, who's coming here next month. Collective unity for a planetized Earth. And with this second axial age, traditional rational consciousness begins to break down into a more, again, holistic and visionary conception. We're seeing it happen right now in front of our eyes. And to some extent, we are the generation that is witnessing those changes with the rise of global consciousness. This rise of global consciousness, pretty much goes back to the 1950s. The first worldwide television pictures that went round, and then the development of the internet. We're seeing that globalization, the realization of the unified nature of the universe. And this takes us to the idea that the Frenchman Teilhard de Chardin, and funny enough, the Russian Vladimir Vendatsky developed. And they developed, there's this idea that we live in a biosphere, right? We live in the biosphere, it's got, all the living bits and breathing and the atmospheres and all that sort of business. And they came up with this idea that we are actually now moving into experiencing what they call the noosphere. Now, the noosphere is derived from the Greek word nous, meaning mind or reason, and also the Greek word sphera, which obviously means sphere. And it's like atmosphere, that's what the sphera bit is, or a biosphere. And this is the noosphere. And it's really the idea of a universal mind, a collective mind that we can be a part of, that we all connect in this universal mind. And that in our next stage of development, we'll move from individual thinking to collective consciousness. Ilia Delio says, the connectivity of the noosphere calls for a new type of engagement on all levels: personal, social, and spiritual. Self-engagement on this level is driven not by an isolated personal center, but by a networked personal center of recursive, which means repeating patterns, relationship. It's characterized by a networked personal center of recursive relationships. In other words, the idea that we're all in this together, and that we'd better get used to it. And that anyone who says otherwise is really just blowing their own trumpet and literally not pulling for the team. And so we're seeing, I think, the evolution of consciousness in this, the breakdown of the old rational and mental way of seeing things, and the emergence of a new visionary, soul-related consciousness that's there to bring us out of our self-obsession and isolation into relationship with each other and with the planet. And we are a part of that. Because this movie is all about education. It is about understanding these ideas and inhabiting them in the world. And we do that in our practice. We do it when we come here. We do it when we talk to others, when we are embodying this new consciousness. And we are doing it when we bring it into reality. And the old consciousness is dying. That is the chaos that we see on our screens every night. So what we do matters. And if you think, I couldn't possibly communicate these ideas, this is too much too complicated for me, you'll also see that on the sheet that I've done, I'm restarting a Developing Consciousness course in April. And Developing Consciousness is a course I developed over 8 weeks, and it's an introduction to the whole nature of the mystical reality, looking at all the various areas that make up the mystical reality, from consciousness, the mind, spirituality, practice. And over 8 weeks, we just look at the whole of this. And I'd like to heartily suggest, if you haven't done this in the past, do it. Bring a friend. If you have done it, come as well, do it again, and bring a friend to it. Because it really is this discussion. It's really about how do we get behind this. Because this is what will bring peace on earth. I mean, this is what is needed. This is how evolution is going, whether or not it seems obvious at the moment. It has to go this way for the human race to survive. And if it doesn't, we'll just have to, evolution will just have to start all over again. We'll all get wiped out, the dinosaurs will be back, or whatever it is, and then amoebas, and we'll gradually start, and then some sort of different species will come out, or aliens will land on the planet and colonize it, whatever. It's the next natural step of our collective consciousness to take. And I read the Tao Te Ching every day, and this is literally today's reading. I thought, I have to read this in this today, because, the Tao is that mystical awareness or consciousness that we're talking about here. And this was today's reading for me. When a country is in harmony with the Tao, the factories make trucks and tractors. When a country goes counter to the Tao, warheads are stockpiled outside the cities. There is no greater illusion than fear, no greater wrong than preparing to defend yourself, no greater misfortune than having an enemy. Whoever can see through all fear will always be safe. Thanks, guys. So appreciate that. And so, listen, we always have an opportunity to come back on what was been said. I always like to say that all this stuff is given out with the willingness to be wrong. So I don't know if anyone's got any comments they'd like to make, any experience you want to share, anything you want to pitch in. Yes. Great. Tracy.
I don't know if this is, but when you meditate and you're meditating and that's kind of a practice that you're doing, you feel so all alone. And I know there's this universal consciousness. Yeah. But I think that people, and we have leaders in the country that can lead us down the wrong way and do things because we're always searching for someone to tell us the right thing to do. And I don't know, it's just there's a vulnerability about the aloneness and looking for guidance. And when you're listening to all of the noise and trying to stay centered, I don't know, I guess I'm just wondering, how do you connect into that universal consciousness? Is it just a matter of finding your people and hanging with them, or, how do you get that collectiveness?
Yeah. I mean, just in my own personal experience, I find, and Heather might want to say something about this, but in my personal experience, I find that when I am doing meditation, what I tend to do is I bring myself into my body. I'm aware of my breath, and I'm aware of my environment around me. And two things happen while that's going on. The first thing that happens is I feel connected to my environment around me. I don't feel alone in meditation. I feel more connected to everything that's around me than when I'm in my mind. Because first of all, I'm connected to my body. And secondly, I'm connected to everything that's there. I feel connected to, if I've got my eyes open, I do sometimes meditate with my eyes open, I feel connected to the candle that's there, the room that's around me, and I feel a part of that. And the second thing that happens is that when I feel connected in that way, is that I get a sense of wisdom. I don't feel alone because actually what comes through, and I try not to focus on any ideas that come through. I have a rule of I do have a pad in front of me, but I don't write anything down when I'm doing meditation. But, most of what I do here comes from my practice. And so I find that wisdom comes through. So I find myself not alone because I find that there is something, as well there that is giving me something as to how to move forward. You know, it's almost visionary. Did you want to say anything?
Well, I just want to echo that, I guess, which is to say that, as you know, my practice is centering prayer, but one of the reasons that motivates me to do it and that I'm so passionate about it, by the way, I'm starting a meditation thing in the fall again every week, but is that it's a collective experience. I find, that's one perspective, is that, yeah, it's lonely and we all sit in our room and do our own thing. But that's just a limited perspective. I think we can choose to take on another perspective, which is that it's foundationally and fundamentally connecting. And I feel that when I almost like envision my being just like chiseling down, like spiraling down to the depths of human connectivity. And I don't feel alone when I'm meditating. I don't. So that's just my experience.
It's interesting that meditation, yes, I'm going to go. Meditation is how you connect. It is the path to making that connection. Most of the time we're on our own in our minds, trying to work it all out. But with meditation, it's how you connect. Yes, Nicole.
Well, I was just going to say that.
I'm just slightly.
Oh, I was just going to say that sometimes we've done group meditation, like when we're in the chapel or with you or Heather on Zoom, and that might be a way of like attending when Nicholas starts to do this, like when you're in a group sometimes, when I'm in a group sometimes and I'm really meditating, there's just this energy in the room with everybody else. But when I do that, I can also do that when I'm on my own.
Yeah, there is a connection in the group as well, I think. Yeah, Camille. And then we'll come to you as well.
May I make a comment?
Oh, yeah,
first?
sorry, I thought you were just passing the microphone, yeah. And then we'll go to Camille, and then we'll come to you, yeah.
Our minds are so used to keeping us busy doing things that our minds don't like it when we try to get quiet immediately if we're not experienced meditators. So I think that feeling of, oh, it's lonely, oh, it's boring, that goes away if you just pay attention to what's around you, keep breathing, be patient with yourself. That's going to happen. And it takes a little time for me, but then I'll feel connected.
Thanks, Sam. Camille, and then we'll come to you. That's great.
I believe that everything is vibrational, and the vibrations go out when we're calm, we're peaceful, we're meditating. Everything around us picks up. If you've ever seen the movie What the Bleep, do we know? Microsoft movie. It explains that.
Good. Just to hear now. Yeah. Just say your name so we all know.
Thanks. Yeah. James, a newcomer. I have a Zen meditation practice. I've had it for 5 or 6 years now. And just something that we're talking about is something we talk about in Zen a lot is co-arising and interconnectedness. And Thich Nhat Hanh talked about it a lot. Are you familiar with that at all?
Thich Nhat Hanh, yeah.
Would you want to talk about interconnectedness at all? Or I can give my perspective.
I'll just give you the 40-minute or the... No, why don't you speak what you'd like to say about interconnections, how you'd like to say. Of course, yes, we come from a perspective here that there is a universal consciousness, that we are the universe made conscious of itself, and that I am that consciousness speaking to you, and you are that consciousness speaking to me, and that we are all manifestations of the same consciousness, and the evolution of consciousness is how we all realize that together, and it comes to a moment where bing, that realization comes about, which is...
Yes,
yeah.
But less metaphysical than that.
Yes, go on.
I was on a hike, and everyone, the leader said, hey, this is how I feel connected, these mountains, these rivers, these grasses. I know I'm going to return to that, and that will become another person at one time. And it's just done that for eons and eons. And I thought about it. I lived in San Francisco for a long time. And I thought about when I'm in a supermarket or when I'm in my car, I feel interconnected and the co-arising happening in my car. Because my car is made in Japan. Well, it's made in Mexico, but it was designed in Japan. And I don't know where the leather seats are coming from, but they come from somewhere, maybe Italy if I'm lucky. Or the circuits are coming from China. And so less metaphysically, this thing is propelling me at 70 miles an hour down the road by fossil fuels or electric. And that less metaphysical aspects is like such a physical co-arising or interconnectedness that makes me, it makes me grounded in that. And then that gives me the trust, which leads to no fear, that I can take the further step and be metaphysically connected to everything in co-arising too. But that's just my take.
That's extremely helpful. Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. Yes, Tom, behind you.
I just wanted to point out in your perception of being alone meditating, in order to have that perception, it's kind of like yin and yang, you have to have perspective on it. So you can't be totally in being alone if you have perspective on it, because the moment you do that, you start expanding to, well, with perspective, I can get out of myself and ultimately be in nature, true reality, within my subjective reality. And in those moments, there's a choice point where you can get out of yourself. Actually, you have to get out of yourself just to have that perspective. So you can flip from individual toward what Nicholas is talking about, whether it's collective, whether it's nature, but it's something bigger than yourself just to have perspective on it. So you're actually not ever totally alone, because you have to, just in entering a meditative state or entering anything beyond your mind, you're in a different state, whatever that state is. So there's choices, there's options.
Thank you.
Options.
That's great. Donna.
It just comes to me, for me, I think of practice as coming home to myself. And that's the starting point of anywhere, of any of this. Is you have to have the clarity and close out or just not be tossed away by what's going on around you. So it's that freedom to come home to yourself, and then you can be on the journey.
That's lovely. Thank you. Coming home to yourself. That's great. Anybody else? Yeah. Lynette, and then Heather's going to say a word. Yeah, great. Thank you.
What is the difference between meditation and centering prayer?
Centering prayer is a form of meditation. It's just one technique. And like Nicholas does a breath-based meditation, centering prayer is a meditation where it's all about releasing. And it's about the moment you realize you're thinking, you have a sacred word that you just utter under your breath and you come back. So it's about coming home to yourself. It's just a technique. So just a different form of meditation.
It is a technique, and I think that if you do your meditation in the fall, it might be good to introduce people to centering prayer as well as part of that.
I can't wait. I will.
Yeah, that's great.
So
Did you want to finally say something?
Yeah, I wanted to just say, I feel like with meditation, one of the issues is that we're so darn self-referential, generally as a culture, and in us, and it trickles down into our spiritual lives, that we come to our meditation practices so concerned about ourselves and our experience and what we're going to get out of it. And I just think that, what would it look like if we came to our meditation practice with the fundamental desire for it to be an expression of our love, of self-giving, rather than what am I going to get out of this?
Yeah, self-giving to the world,
So
self-giving
like tomorrow when I sit down and meditate, I'm going to think of you, Tracy. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to meditate with you. It's like having an awareness, like, who am I giving this to? It's not all about me.
My perspective is the evolution of consciousness comes about by us giving love into the world through our meditative practice. It is giving with no expectation of return. It is an act of love.
Yeah, and we just too easily want to get something out. Yeah. We always want to feel better. We want to have a good experience and feel connected. It doesn't matter. It's just like, what do you want to give?
So your question, Tracy, has affected you've affected every single person in this room. We are of your family now in relationship to your question. And that's how it works. Thank you for that. I really appreciate you being vulnerable enough to say that, because, I always say we're more likely to talk about our sex lives than our meditation practices. It's more difficult to do that. Okay.